Forget New Year, New You. This season is about slowing down, locking the doors, and cozying up at home with the one you really want to do nothing with. Your dog. After the holiday chaos, those quiet nights with a blanket, a podcast, and your pup feel like the reset you actually need. Ollie helps make those moments easier with fresh protein-packed meals made from real human-grade ingredients, so your dog can enjoy some quality comfort food too. Choose from 5 recipes and get a personalized plan for your dog's needs. Meals arrive perfectly proportioned with a scoop and storage container, so serving is fast and mess-free. And with Ollie's in-app on-demand health screenings, supporting your dog is easy, ensuring more cuddles for many years to come. Visit ollie.com/truecrime and use code TRUECRIME for 60% off your first box.
In February 2010, something very strange happened in Fallbrook, California, located in northern San Diego County. An entire family, a father, a mother, and their 2 children mysteriously vanished from their home, never to be seen or heard from again. It was an abrupt disappearance, or so it seemed. On February 15, 2010, a San Diego County Deputy Patrolman, Michael Tingley, took in the scene as he searched the family home with Mike McStay, who had called authorities to report his brother, 40-year-old Joseph McStay, Joseph's wife, 43-year-old Summer, and their 2 sons, Gianni, 4, and Joe Jr., 3, were all missing. They hadn't been seen in days. The appearance of the home didn't seem to shed any light on where the family could be. A lamp was knocked over in a bedroom, and plates of half-eaten food were left untouched. The coffee was still in the pot. The family's 2 beloved dogs were outside. Had they left in a hurry? According to their loved ones, Joseph was a laid-back surfer who was an outgoing and chatty businessman everybody seemed to like. His wife, Summer, wasn't afraid to say what was on her mind and loved their 2 sons dearly. Later, the prosecution would frame it as a great mystery. February 4th, 2010 was the last time the McStays had been seen. Since then, their bank accounts were undrawn, their cell phones and emails gone quiet.
How does this family of 4 disappear off the face of the earth? How does this family of 4, a husband who's running a business, a mom who's raising her 2 kids, fixing up a house they just bought recently, how do they just disappear?
How indeed. This is Jillian, and you are listening to Court Junkie, episode 139. Joseph's brother, Mike, climbed through a window, unlocked the front door, and let Deputy Tingley inside. The deputy didn't have a search warrant. Deputy Tingley didn't see any blood or broken items, no signs of an obvious struggle. The house was pretty empty, as the 2 men searched every room and every closet. No one in need of help, and no bodies. The missing persons case was going to be elevated, although the investigation faced hurdles because no crime seemed to have occurred. Deputy Tingley alerted the Homicide Division. The situation was extremely unusual for an entire family to be missing for an estimated 11 days now. Law enforcement moved into action. The house went into lockdown. Additional units were called in. The sheriff's office began knocking on neighbors' doors to see if anyone saw something, or to check if any home surveillance cameras in the area may have captured any clues. Right away, the investigation ran into some issues. One of the McStay's neighbors, according to authorities, gave investigators a small portion of her camera footage, but wouldn't hand it all over. She would later testify that if they took her cameras, she wouldn't feel safe in her home, and everyone in the neighborhood was pretty on edge after they learned about the missing family. Homicide Detective Troy Dugal, a 23-year veteran on the force, headed to the scene to take over. After surveying the home, he quickly gained a little glimpse into the McStay family's life. Freshly painted walls with blue painter's tape still attached to them. A mattress on the master bedroom floor instead of a bed. The detective sensed the family had just moved in or had been renovating their home. He noticed rotting bananas and an opened carton of eggs on the counter, and 2 children-sized bowls, almost full with popcorn, that were left out on the futon, as if their snack had been suddenly interrupted. Other than that, no real clues as to where the McStays could be. As the investigation continued, detectives found out that the family's abandoned Isuzu Trooper had been towed on February 8, 2010, from a shopping center near the Mexico border.
At this stage, are you thinking homicide, or are you thinking missing persons, or is there a distinction?
Well, I know for a fact I have a missing persons case, and I am more than concerned because the children are gone, and I don't have a good story for why they're gone. I even reached out to find out if the adults were fighting, right? That's a very traditional domestic issue. Two adults fight, one goes running away and the other one goes chasing, and now the family doesn't know what's going on. Those are some of the things running through my head from a missing persons aspect. My fear and my job is to always be concerned about the homicide. That was in my head from the very moment I responded to Deputy Tingley, is make sure you're covering your bases for if this is a homicide.
Detective Dugal was trying to gather as much information as he could. He would later testify that he had been working on the case nonstop, even as he juggled this case with his other cases. Also complicating the investigation was the fact that department resources were spread thin, following another high-profile murder in the area where a teenager was raped and murdered while out jogging. Detective Dugal testified that he only slept about 5 hours a night. Nevertheless, he started interviewing people in the McStay family's circle, from relatives to business associates. According to his testimony in court, he heard some concerning news. Joseph's mother, Susan Blake, had gone over to the McStay's family home and was cleaning and straightening up when her other son, Mike, the one who had let the first deputy into the home several days prior, took Joseph's computer from his office. Mike later testified that he took his brother's computer with the intent of turning over financial records to the detectives, but Mike didn't have a power cord, so he couldn't run the machine. Here's Detective Dugal talking about learning all of this and how he was trying to get a search warrant as the family was cleaning the house.
At no time am I going to get in the family's face and say, you can't, you won't. I'm actually asking them, give me everything you can. Tell me about your son. Tell me about Summer. Tell me about the grandkids. Give me everything. When you're dealing with a missing persons case and the family doesn't yet believe that their loved ones, and nor did I have to believe their loved ones were murdered, they're going to give you all the great stuff. My family's great, Summer's great, Joseph's great, business is perfect, they're wealthy, the kids are a joy. That's what you get. And I know that, and that's fine. And sometime along that interview process over days, I'm going to try to wedge in there and say, I know they're fantastic people. Tell me the bad things. Tell me who doesn't like them. Tell me who owes Joseph and Summer money. And that did evolve over time. It took some time. Kind of lost my train of thought on your question.
So the question was, how did you respond to Susan Blake telling you she had cleaned up in the house and Mike had taken the computer?
Okay. Susan's a very nice lady. I'm talking to mom, and I'm getting mom's stuff. And she's being nice and cleaning up after her son, so when he returns, his house isn't a mess. My homicide detective personality is going, you gotta be kidding me. Don't do that. And I told her politely, stop what you're doing and leave it alone and have Michael return the computer, because she didn't know that I was working on a search warrant to get in that house. And I don't just broadcast that because it's going to scare the family to death.
Detective Dugal said he knew it would be difficult to obtain the search warrant from a judge, Because first he had to prove probable cause that a crime had been committed at the residence or in their cars. That was difficult to prove. There were no bodies in the house after all. This wasn't a traditional homicide if the McStays were in fact dead. The McStays, Joseph, Summer, and their 2 young sons, still hadn't shown up as the investigation went on.
I don't have a family. I don't have anything that I know is a crime, except I now have a bunch of statements that are bending towards a family of 4 does not disappear for, on the 19th, 15 days. So where's a family of 4 after 15 days? And I have statements from the family saying, well, they might have gone on vacation. But now the family's starting to bend over and going, well, this is ridiculous. We're way too long. I have statements from business associates saying, well, we were rich and happy wasn't so true. So I'm going, well, that's unusual. I have family members telling me that Summer had an ex-boyfriend, that the story started to get, as I told you, it's going to get deeper. Some of the dirt's going to come up. The dirt was coming up. I wrote down everything I knew at that point. I took it to the judge. He granted me the search warrant. I searched the house, the trooper, the Dodge, and I left the house.
On February 20th, 2010, authorities served that search warrant, although the house already looked different from a few days earlier. It was cleaner, losing some of that feel of a family who had just moved in and thrown their clothes around. Newspapers that had been tossed about on the floor, possibly from a fight, the detectives wondered, were cleaned up too. The eggs, popcorn, and rotten bananas were put away. They smelled the scent of fresh paint. Detective Dugal was now searching for evidence of a crime. Blood, forced entry, anything. He saw a child's beanie, a game system controller, and a leash on top of a round wooden table. Later at trial, the prosecution zoomed into the photographs of that table and pointed out tiny red droplets that seemed to look like blood spatter right there on the table. The detective had missed it. The prosecution contacted Detective Dugal as they were preparing for trial to let him know that there was evidence that was lost. Whether it was blood or not, it was impossible to know for sure now.
After, as you were preparing for trial, you met with Mr. Imes and I. Did we point something out about this photograph?
You did.
Okay. And in particular, we zoomed in to the bottom of the photograph.
You did.
Have you, in your career as a police detective, seen blood spatter?
I have.
Okay. So what you see in the bottom part of this photograph, you can't say it's blood, right?
I can't say it's blood. It's a horrible moment where I don't know what it is. I did not see it with my naked eyes when I was in the residence at all. And now that the district attorney zoomed it in, it puts a pit in my stomach, but I don't know what it is. I can't say it's blood, and I can't say it isn't blood.
Going through the house, authorities began collecting computers, a thumb drive, cameras, checks, cell phones, and records as evidence to go through later. Cadaver dogs trained to sniff out decomposition of a human body smelled the backyard.
Did you tear up any carpet, do anything like that at the house?
No. Part of the search process is obviously to look for a crime scene, to find evidence of a crime, and we did not. And once you find evidence of a crime, if you find evidence of a crime, you can dig deeper. You can do more chemical testing. You can tear carpet up. You can cut walls out if you need to. But just in general, if you just go in and you look around and it looks normal, we don't cut walls and pull carpet. We just don't. That's not a traditional search, especially in a missing persons case.
The investigation showed both Joseph's and Summers' last outgoing calls from their cell phones were on February 4th. The McStays also hadn't used their bank account since February 4th. The lack of communication and bank activity wasn't a good sign that this was only a missing persons case. Detective Dugal obtained Joseph and Summers' dental records, unique identifiers, just in case their remains were found. One theory was the family fled to Mexico, since their car was found suspiciously close to the Mexican border in San Diego.
So, as a detective, we follow our leads, we follow the evidence, and we chase down every statement and anything anyone ever claims happened. I have to put every one of those things to rest. So now we have the trooper at the border, which would indicate, without a good story behind it, that the McStays are missing, the troopers at the border, there's nothing in the house I find that's suspicious. So why is the trooper at the border and where's the McStays? Well, there's the last known position of the vehicle. I happen to live in San Diego. I know that people frequently illegally park in those parking lots where the McStay vehicle was, and they illegally park there to walk across the border. So I sent a sergeant and another detective down to the U.S.-Mexico border to inquire with Immigration, Customs, and Border Patrol to find any camera that records on either side of the border and to collect all video for the 8th of February 2010 for future review.
And you found a video of what appears to be 2 adults and 2 small children?
And then that took quite a bit of work.
The surveillance video they found was taken from the San Ysidro port of entry on that very same day the car was towed, February 8th. The video appeared to show a family of 4 casually walking across the border into Mexico. San Diego Sergeant Roy Frank told reporters that it was an encouraging lead, but Joseph's brother Mike said the video quality was very poor and that he couldn't make a positive identification. In fact, Mike said the man in the video walks nothing like his brother. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, or NCMEC, as Detective Dugal calls them, helped analyze the video.
NCMEC was a big participant in that border video because there's no way there was over 100,000 people that walked through that border that day. So if you're looking at a video for 24 hours and you're trying to identify, is it Summer? Is it Joseph? Is it Summer with the children and Joseph is gone? Is it Joseph with the children and Summer is gone? Or is it just Joseph and Summer? You get the dynamic there. We have to literally watch each person walking across that border and decipher it. NCMEC gave me 3 people, different parts of the country, took a copy of my video, took it home and viewed that. We all came back together after some time and determined which ones were most likely.
Fair to say that video is not the best quality and you don't see the faces of the individuals walking.
It's terrible.
Okay. You see them walking away from the camera.
Yes.
And it's at night?
It's night.
Shadows, lights?
Well, the video itself starts in the day. It's a 24-hour period, and during the day, the video is actually pretty decent, still the same view. There was another camera that showed a different view. During the day, it looked good, but at night, it was blacked out. Couldn't see much of anything, so I was left with what I had.
The video was a dead end. It didn't look as though the McStays had crossed the border into Mexico, after all. After the surveillance video lead didn't pan out, Detective Dugal turned his attention to Earth-inspired products, the business that Joseph ran.
I wanted to know more about the business, Joseph's financial dealings with his personal records, his business records, anything, Summer's personal finances to see if they were in debt, how they got into their house, you name it.
Joseph sold customized water fountains and waterfalls, high-end features sometimes costing thousands of dollars that were shipped all over the world, including to Saudi Arabia. Joseph's business was successful, even though his expertise wasn't in building. He relied on others to construct his designs. That's where his friend and business partner, Charles Chase Merritt, came in. Because they were both so involved, tag-teaming at Earth-inspired products, Joseph and Chase were in constant communication. It was Chase who initially sounded the alarm to Joseph's mother on February 9th that he couldn't reach Joseph. Chase even went to the McStays' empty house and left food and water out for the family's dogs that were left in the backyard. Here's how Chase told it.
Mikey and his mom kept saying, I know Joseph, and he probably just wanted to take some, be away away from the telephone or whatever, and they're probably on vacation. They're going to be back, and then Mikey said, well, if they took a 10-day vacation, which most vacations are, they'll be back no later than Sunday, and so on. And I was just like, just call the police. What's it going to, and I told his mother, I said, it's not going to hurt anything. It's not going to cost anything. At least they, and that day on Saturday, I told Mikey, I said, what if Joseph did go to the mountains and he drove off a cliff? And he's down in a ravine, 200 feet down a ravine, and nobody sees the car down there for 2 or 3 weeks, and I said, you should call him now. You should call the police now.
On February 17th, detectives met with Chase for a nearly 3-hour interview. The interview was recorded. Chase described the last time he remembered seeing Joseph during a lengthy business lunch on February 4th at Chick-fil-A, where the two partners met to exchange checks. Detectives went to the fast food joint, but 2 weeks later, the video surveillance was gone, so they couldn't independently verify what Chase had said. Chase and Joseph were so close, they sometimes talked for hours at a time. Their finances were intermingled. Chase used Joseph's credit card to buy supplies to build the specialized water features, he told detectives. Chase, who called Joseph his best friend, was able to provide a lot of insight into the McStay family. Like the detectives had hoped, Chase opened up about everything from tensions with Joseph's wife, Summer, to Joseph's business associate who might have had an axe to grind. Chase seemed to carefully choose his adjectives when describing Summer. She was verbal, very verbal, he said. He wasn't as careful on his word choice, though, when he described Joseph as pussy whipped. None of Joseph's friends liked Summer, according to Chase.
Nobody around Joseph likes Summer very much, because Joseph is just a super nice guy. I mean, he'll give you the shirt off his back. I mean, he'll do anything for you. And Summer's just the opposite. She's taking the shirt off. Well, I don't know so much about that, but she won't give up anything. What's hers is hers, and what's hers is going to stay hers. And Joseph is more like, you know what? There you go. Hell, I mean, I've got, mine and Joseph's running tab is $10,000. He owes me $10,000. I owe him $15,000. He owes me $5,000. I owe him $15,000. It just goes. And Summer never liked that, because it was just always a running tab. Everybody told Joseph, don't marry her, because she's a pain in the butt. She's very, very difficult. He always said, no, she's just Colombian, he talked all the time about her being Colombian as it's something positive, my little Colombian girl.
When asked if Summer or Joseph were jealous people, he said he knows Joseph wasn't, and he couldn't say for sure about Summer, but he assumed it's in her personality. Aside from saying that no one around Joseph liked Summer, it was also clear in the way Chase talked about her that Summer was a fierce defender of children. She once got upset at Chase when he talked about spanking his child as punishment. Summer didn't believe in corporal punishment. Joseph had another, older son from a previous marriage, and Summer was said to adore him. The detectives asked Chase about his finances.
Do you have any financial problems? We've been having financial problems for 6, 7 months, 8 months. Well, it's just business has been, it dropped right out from under us for like 3 months. There was almost no sales at all, and that killed us financially. My heart attack didn't help much.
They then asked Chase what he thought may have happened to the family.
Well, my wife and I have been talking about it over and over and over again. I've talked to Joseph's mom about it over and over, to Mikey about it, to Dan about it. And Joseph's mom keeps saying, well, maybe they went to Mexico and caught a plane to, wherever. And I'm like, I honestly, it is my, and I would stake my life on it. I don't think Joseph would take those kids in Mexico for any reason.
So what do you believe? I want to know what you believe happened, not what mom thinks.
I don't believe, I haven't been able to form any opinion because, because Joseph doesn't have any enemies. Everybody loves Joseph. Everybody. He has no financial problems that I know of. I mean, him and I, things were tight over the last few months because of the economy, but stuff has been, over the last couple of months, things have started picking up and everything was looking really promising.
Chase was asked point blank if he was involved in the family's disappearance. He emphatically said no. He had nothing to gain from Joseph's absence.
I mean, I don't know of anybody that has anything to gain by Joseph being gone. I think everybody that I know has everything to lose. Everything. This business stems almost solely around Joseph. He does all of the sales. Dan's trying to send me some emails and need to try to salvage some of the jobs that are trying to send stuff back, because they can't get hold of Joseph, they're pissed off, things like that, and projects that people are calling in for saying, we're ready to do them. Can you get hold of us? And I'm trying to call them and trying to, but I can't do what Joseph can do. There's just no way. I manufacture. I'm a builder. I can't sell.
So in Joseph's absence, are you going to be able to maintain the business, though?
If he's gone permanently?
No, for the next 6 months.
I don't know. Dan is coming here. I have my doubts.
The Dan that Chase mentions is Dan Kavanaugh, who is in charge of the company's website from Hawaii. Chase and Dan were trying to pick up the pieces and run the business until Joseph returned. Chase had never met Dan in person, but he knew Dan was technology savvy. Chase described him as a big hacker. Chase told detectives that Joseph didn't have any enemies, but that didn't mean that everything was always perfect at the business. Chase described a fallout between Joseph and Dan, who had co-founded the business together. Joseph was paying Dan $50,000 to buy him out of the business and still owed him about $2,000. Dan was going to go from a partner to just running the website.
I was talking to him the other day, and I said something about him knowing the web, and he said, I'm not a person that you want to piss off on the web. That type of thing. And I said, I know Joseph told me that you can, there's a lot you can do, and, you could shut the website down, because Joseph was afraid that he was just going to push the button and the website be gone. Because that's what Dan said. They were, when they clashed, Dan said, look, this is what I want, and, I don't have to continue working this website. And so Joseph made a deal with him to buy his part of it, because Dan wasn't making enough money. I don't even know what it was, but I know a while back they decided that they were going to buy, Joseph was going to buy him out, and then he was just going to run the website. That's the extent of it that I know of.
Chase spoke with law enforcement for a considerable amount of time, even though he was an ex-felon and had a probation violation warrant out for his arrest, something the investigators were fully aware of. Several media outlets reported that Chase had a criminal record, although he had never been convicted of a violent crime before. He had served time for receiving stolen property, burglary, petty theft, grand theft, and other crimes. The detectives assured Chase that he wasn't going to be immediately arrested for the outstanding warrant. Chase told them that he had wanted to talk to the detectives because finding Joseph was more important than Chase's legal troubles with the warrant.
My wife and I talked about it, and we decided, you know what, this is just too important to put it off. Even if it screws up my life a little bit, Joseph's life is at stake, and I can't put this off. Because if I put it off for a day, and then something that I can tell you could have found him, and I find out later that that extra day screwed it up, and then I've got to live with it, and I'm not prepared for that. So Joseph was one of my best friends, and obviously I'm my business associate, and it's not something I want to live with. So.
One of the detectives pointed out that Chase used the past tense to talk about his best friend during the interview, and asked him if he has any explanation for why he would do that.
No, not really. I just,
Do you understand what I'm asking?
Of course. I completely understand. But no, I've never really even thought of him as possibly being, well, I can't say I haven't thought of him as possibly being dead, if I have, but I don't like to think of it that way, of course. So, no. I have no idea. I'm not sure what he used past tense in context with, but I have no idea why.
Joe was my best friend.
Oh, I did.
You did.
And I don't know why.
Okay. Did you guys have a falling out at all?
Never.
Okay, so it would be like he was my best friend, and now we're just.
No, absolutely not. Joseph is.
Okay, still your best friend.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Chase willingly submitted a DNA sample. With Joseph missing and the business in flux, Chase went to Joseph's mother, Susan Blake, and asked for money to finish some of their projects. Susan was sometimes woken up at 2 a.m. in the morning from a customer in Saudi Arabia who was upset because he hadn't received his fountain.
There were jobs that needed to be completed, but needed funds to complete them.
Were those conversations at all about what happened to Joe?
In the beginning, we were doing flyers and media and all of that, so I had asked him to participate in that, and he wouldn't.
Susan began writing Chase checks from her personal account, which she felt was an act of love for Joseph to support his business so he wouldn't lose it when he returned home. She believed she would get paid back, but that never happened, she would later tell a courtroom. Chase never reimbursed her. Starting in March, a month after Joseph's disappearance, Susan, Chase, and Dan began meeting at Dan's San Diego apartment to plan how to keep the business afloat for when Joseph finally returned home. Dan had previously been in Hawaii before coming to San Diego. Tensions were high between Chase, who needed money to finance the outstanding orders, and Dan, who didn't want to invest anything further into the business.
And can you describe the exchange between the two of them? Was it angry or calm, or how did that go?
It wasn't yelling and screaming on that meeting. We had 2 meetings.
When was the next meeting?
After that, we went back down to Dan's and was going over the fountains and the accounts, and that's when it was super Dan and Chase yelling at each other. I mean, really, really bad, really loud. They were definitely yelling big time at each other, arguing, and Dan just wasn't going to budge. And it was, to me at the time, very scary. So I literally walked out and said, if my son loses his business, so be it. I need to find my family. And I left.
By this time, the McStay family's disappearance was getting national attention. Joseph's brother went on Nancy Grace multiple times. Detective Dugal had flown to Washington and appeared on America's Most Wanted. He was getting flooded with tips, including from psychics and mediums who wanted to weigh in on where Joseph and his family were. But the years went by. The McStays, alive or dead, were not found. No arrests were made. Until November 11th, 2013, a major break in the case. John Bluth, a Napa Valley man who loved riding dirt bikes in the desert, was spending that Veterans Day doing that very thing. As he went off-road near the county landfill, about 100 miles from the McStay's house and less than a mile from the freeway, something caught his eye, a small white object. He stopped. It was a bone. He would later find out that it was actually a child's partial human skull that animals had dug up.
I stopped and I put my bike on the side stand. I walked back and I looked at it and I thought that might have been a human.
So what did you do?
I went back to where my bike was, which was on a little hill, and I called I called 911.
Dr. Alexis Gray, a forensic anthropologist, was celebrating her wedding anniversary at home when she got the call from the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Office. She quickly determined the remains were human. She went to the desolate scene that was in the middle of nowhere in the desert, in an unincorporated part of the county. Her husband wasn't mad. He understood. Walking around in the desert, not far from the first bone, Dr. Gray saw more: an adult's tibia and an adult's femur laying in the sand. The sheriff's office set up a command post and began to excavate. What they discovered were 2 graves. The partial remains of the 4 McStay family members had been found. Joseph and Joe Jr. were buried together in a grave that animals had dug up. Summer and Gianni were in the second grave. Buried about 10 inches into the sand in one of the graves was skull fragments and dark hair. In Summer's grave, the sheriff's office collected black pants, by now dirty and worn from time and the conditions, that was intertwined together with a pair of women's white underwear, as if the pants and the underwear had been pulled down hurriedly at the same time. The detectives reported other items excavated from the graves: a kitty backpack, part of a robe, a cell phone case with the phone missing, a diaper, a ripped bra, and a sledgehammer that had traces of paint from the family's home. 2 sets of tire tracks led to the graves, still faintly visible, even after all this time. Joseph and Summer's families heard the news. Joseph's mother remembered the brutal call when she learned their fate.
My son called me, Mikey, and I was at my office. It was my day off, but I was there working. And he told me they found their bodies, and they were dead, all of them.
Joseph's mother waited 6 months to go to the spot where the bodies of her son, daughter-in-law, and 2 grandsons had been found. 4 crosses were left in the sand as a memorial.
I went with my friend, and it's hard to find, so we walked a long time in areas we didn't even know. I've never walked in the desert, and it was hot. So we were obviously in the wrong area. And then a car pulled up, and it was someone that we knew. And I had asked them if they knew exactly which way to go, and they pointed us in the right direction. So me and my friend went to see the 4 crosses, and it just dropped me to my knees, because it shouldn't be. It just shouldn't be. It's just such a shock to see that. I'll never go back to that spot.
Dr. Shanakarn Shangsi was the chief forensic pathologist for the San Bernardino Coroner's Division. It was her job to conduct an autopsy and to look at the history and circumstances to determine the cause and manner of death. Dr. Shangsi alone conducted 400 to 500 autopsies each year. She studied the partial skeletal remains of Joseph, Summer, and the 2 little boys that had arrived in 3 boxes and 1 body bag. On November 14, 2013, she started conducting the autopsies. In all 4, she ruled the manner of death as homicide. She examined the remains of Joseph McStay, whose body was encased in a woven-type fabric and dirt. A jury would later look at the gruesome photograph of his remains, which were the most preserved out of his family members. Joseph's ribs were broken. There was an open hole in the back of his head, plus other fractures on his skull. His skull had been hit at least 4 times. The back of his right leg was fractured. He was wrapped in a white electrical cord, and across his body was a red tie-down strap. Dr. Shangsi ruled the cause of Joseph's death as multiple blunt force injuries to the head. Summer McStay's skull had been shattered into multiple pieces. Her jaw was broken in several places. Summer's skull had been struck at least 6 times, according to the doctor's examination. Her cause of death was multiple blunt force injuries to the head. Dr. Shangsi couldn't tell if Summer had been raped, since there was no soft tissue left in the vaginal area of the skeletal remains. For 3-year-old Joe Jr., the cause of death was undetermined. For 4-year-old Gianni, the cause of death was multiple blunt force injuries to the head. Gianni received at least 6 strikes to his head, right around the time of his death. Looking at the damage to the bones, Dr. Shangsi believed the 3-pound sledgehammer that was found in the grave was possibly the murder weapon that had bludgeoned the entire family.
There's no way to tell definitively the exact weapon, but you can rule in or rule out weapons that may have been used. Obviously, it's not like a rod, because a rod would not leave a round or a half-circle pattern on the bone. So knowing about the sledgehammer in the grave and the characteristics of some of the fractures, I could say that the sledgehammer is a possible weapon that was used.
Now investigators could definitively say that the McStay family was no longer missing, but deceased, murdered. But they still didn't know who had killed them and why. And they wouldn't know, or at least they wouldn't believe they had enough evidence, until almost exactly a year later.
Charles Chase Merritt was identified as the suspect responsible for the death of Joseph, Summer, Gianni, and Joseph McStay. There's no information to suggest there were any other suspects involved in this crime. Chase Merritt was a business associate of Joseph McStay. The cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma, and based on the entire investigation and the evidence obtained, investigators believe these murders occurred at their residence in Fallbrook.
In part 2, Joseph's business partner, Chase Merritt, goes on trial for the murders. And that's all for this episode. I won't ask you for your thoughts on this case until after you hear part 2, which will be released next week. It was an extremely lengthy trial that went on for months, so I decided it needed its own episode. These episodes were researched and written by Gabrielle Russon, with some additions by myself. You can follow this podcast on Instagram at Court Junkie, on Twitter at Court Junkie Pod, and on YouTube at youtube.com/courtjunkie. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.